Good day. I'm Emily Kund, and along with Jen Vaughn, we've organized the Tableau Fringe Festival that you'll watch today. One of the best things about Tableau is the community. So what do you do when there's too much awesomeness for one Tableau conference? You organize a Fringe Festival. A big shout out to Jonathan Drummy for coming up with the name. Our goal is simple. We want to showcase some really awesome knowledge by some really awesome folks in the Tableau community. We want to make sure that their message is heard. We'll start the day with a keynote by Dan Murray, the author of Tableau Your Data and the upcoming Tableau Your Data 2. Dan is also the Director of Strategic Innovation at Interworks, and he'll be talking today about how Tableau can facilitate learning and discovery. And as anyone who knows me can tell you, I'm super excited for the keynotes and the sessions we have today. From topics ranging from formatting tweaks, to server, to building community, to networking graphs and Tableau Public, our goal is to deliver a little something for everyone. We're fortunate today to have Emma White of the Information Lab, and she's talking about the font of all knowledge. Emma is a consultant with the Information Lab and trains and mentors users in the ways of Tableau. We also have Chris DiMartini, who will push the boundaries of what some people think Tableau can do by creating beautiful and functional networking graphs. Chris has worked at Deloitte and Visa and is focused on the application of data analytics in the audit process and is considered a leader in his field. Alex Duke will also be speaking today. And Alex has been using Tableau for 4 years and has been active in her local tugs. She likes to learn different ways to present data and to help others build a better data story. Alex also recently joined Solemn Consulting. Paul Benoob is with us today, and Paul is passionate about data viz. He's the co-leader of the London Tug and an active blogger. Paul's talk is a must-watch for anyone who wants to learn how people have successfully implemented the Tableau ecosystem into their environment or their organization. We'll also hear from my co-organizer, Jen Vaughn. Jen is an accredited Tableau trainer, co-chair of the Seattle Tug, a Tableau social ambassador, and basically a one-stop shop for Tableau knowledge, ranging from server to building a community. We'll hear from Carl Alchin. Carl is passionate about basketball, and that comes through in his data visualizations. Carl will talk about how using Tableau Public to visualize what you love can help you learn more about Tableau and the things that you're passionate about. Carl works for the Information Lab as a Tableau and Alteryx consultant, is an accredited Tableau trainer, and a Tableau social ambassador. And finally, TFF will end with a keynote by Chuck Hooper on how to forge your own path in Tableau. Chuck brings a wealth of experience in visual analytics and information technology and is now focused on training and speaking engagements. As you watch the sessions today, don't forget to use the hashtag TFF so that we can engage outside of the Google Hangouts and further the discussion. Each session will have its own link and recording, which will be available for viewing later on YouTube. The sessions will have a Q&A feature, and to ask questions, just click the Q&A app that's inside the Google Hangouts. Each session is 30 minutes, and we've allotted some time for questions. I appreciate the time that you've taken out of your schedule today to watch the sessions. It's my sincere hope that you will enjoy the Tableau Fringe Festival. As we like to say, it's from the community for the community. And in a few minutes, we'll begin with Dan Murray.
This is Dan. Can you hear me? This is Dan. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dan. All right, so we have Dan Murray, who, as I mentioned, is the Director for Strategic Innovation with Tableau and is probably one of the people that has the most experience using Tableau. And he has a great backstory for how he got started. It's really interesting to hear Dan talk, and I'm so excited to hear how he is going to talk about how Tableau can facilitate learning and discovery and how you can do that in your organization. So without further ado, Dan, it's all yours.
Okay. Emily, I just want to make sure, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. So thank you for inviting me to speak at the first Tableau Fringe Festival. I was trying to think of a suitably fringy cover to put on my presentation. I was thinking of things like Woodstock, and then I just decided, well, my office at home is sort of a bricolage of junk. And that's what you see there. This is where I work when I'm not on the road consulting. And it sort of fits the style, I think, of what I'm going to talk about today. Let me get
Dan, I think you might, there we go. I think you just need to, oh, now we can see you, I think.
All right. And I just want to make sure the slide deck is visible, right?
No, I'm seeing just a black screen. So there we go.
So you can see the slide deck, just this piece?
And I can see the your entire program.
Okay.
So I think you just need to do the slideshow.
How about that?
I still see the entire program.
All right. Well, we'll work this out in a second. Let me try screen sharing again.
All right. There's your office, the Bricolage.
All right. And I'm going into full presentation mode. Is that visible?
Then share your screen.
Okay. So,
okay, so we see the screen and it has your data bricolage
yes.
presentation on it. We can still see your notes, so you might just need to do the slideshow in the program, whatever that is.
Yeah, I'm trying to get into presentation mode, and when I do that, apparently you can't see it. I may just do it from the other mode if we can't figure this out in the next 30 seconds. Are you seeing only my data bricolage cover yet?
I see your speaking notes as well.
All right. Well, we'll go with it that way. How about that?
That's good.
All right. So let's get started. So I'm going to talk about a few topics this morning. First, what the heck is bricolage, and also data abstraction, what I mean by adjacent possibilities, and then how Tableau aids in visual memory. And let's get started with what is bricolage and what do I mean by this? Well, it's actually a French word that means the process of improvisation, and it applies to works or products that are do-it-yourself. So I think very much the Tableau community this way. While there is a certain amount of business interaction when you engage with Tableau, and of course they're selling product to businesses, it's really about the individual and enabling the individual to do analysis, discovery work, and reporting. And I think this word fits the Tableau community for that reason. There are some other, examples of bricolage. For example, in writing, William S. Burroughs developed a method for writing that was called cutout. He wrote some very strange books that were just cutouts of existing work. You may be familiar with Austin Klien, who wrote several books that were very visual. He has a blog that is all about highlighting or cutting out work from magazine and newspaper articles to create small stories and poems. And I think, you know, when you think of Tableau, or at least when I think of Tableau, that's what I think of. It's doing visual bricolage. Now, there's another kind of visual bricolage. Another example would be Picasso. And I like this quote. You know, Picasso started out as a traditional artist. When he was a child, he was trained classically. And, you know, his early art looked very much like other early art. Classically drawn or painted pictures. Now, I like this example because it shows Tableau abstracting a bull. And this is a lot like how I think of data visualization. How do you take a very detailed picture of data and abstract it to the essence of what's important? You can see that this drawing goes from a very complex view of a bull to a very abstract view that still communicates the essence of what is important. And that's what I think bricolage in terms of data visualization is. It's taking information from many different sources, blending it together, then abstracting that in a way that makes it easy to understand what is important in the data. Now, there's another concept here at play that I think is very much part of the Tableau community. And there's a biologist named Stuart Kaufman that came up with this concept of the adjacent possible. Roughly 2002, Stephen Johnson wrote a book called Where Good Ideas Come From, that a chapter is devoted to this concept of the adjacent possible, or first order combinations. And there's an example in it I think is particularly good. You know, what is the adjacent possible? What does it really mean? Well, this Stéphane Tarnier was a doctor in Paris in the 1870s who, on his day off, visited the Paris zoo. And during his trip around the zoo, he saw a chicken incubator with chicks in it. Now, this is before we had incubators for children. And when he saw the incubator, and he started thinking about the number of deaths that children were experiencing at that time. Roughly 1 in 5 children died shortly after childbirth. He started looking at these little chicks wandering around in this incubator and realized maybe that could be a solution for the number of children that are dying shortly after childbirth, particularly very underweight children. And so he hired this guy from the zoo to build an incubator, and that's what the image is there. And what he did differently, because there were other people that had tried this, he actually collected data on 500 children. And what he found is that after putting these children in the incubator, it roughly halved the number of deaths. And this is what's really interesting about this adjacent possibility concept, is that there aren't many great ideas and innovative breakthroughs that just happen out of thin air. It's because you're exposed, or someone is exposed to multiple ideas from multiple sources, that new things emerge. And I think this example with the child incubator is a great example of how that might work. So this is really part of what I think makes Tableau successful and the Tableau community successful, is this idea of data bricolage. And there's lots of facilities that Tableau has for enabling sharing of ideas and information through data visualization. Of course, you can build dashboards, you can tell stories, but even more importantly, Tableau created this community in Tableau Public. And this community really enables this sort of adjacent possibility concept. I mean, you can go to Tableau Public and you can look at, well, over 500,000 visualizations now. When I started in Tableau, there was no Tableau Public in 2007. And there were limited opportunities for interacting with other people that were using Tableau, because basically there was not that many people using it. There weren't even that many Tableau employees. But I could call up Tableau and say, hey, I built a viz. Could you put it on your blog? And they would always oblige that. And I think Tableau started getting other phone calls from other people and realized that this concept of a public venue for Tableau visualizations was a really great way to facilitate this idea of adjacent possibility. And so what you see now at Tableau Public are just literally hundreds of thousands of views going on in a typical month, over 500,000 visualizations. And this whole concept of data bricolage is being enabled through Tableau Public. You know, in a given day, I go out to Tableau Public and just look at the viz of the week or the viz of the day. And I look at what's out there, and it's always idea generating. I mean, what I really love is the idea that you can look at someone else's work and download that work and repurpose it for your own use. You can learn technique that way. It's just idea generating. And this is, you know, really important. The other thing that this enables is a way of remembering things. I mean, think about Tableau in your organization. And imagine looking at any sort of data that occurs over time or with other information in your business. Is it easier to remember a grid of numbers, or is it better and easier to remember an image? And there's something called the method of loci. And this is a mnemonic strategy. Before we had computers, before we had type, people remembered things by making visual images. And this was invented by the Greeks and the Romans. And people like Aristotle and poets of the day would get up on stage and be able to recite very long sonnets. And they did this by creating visualizations in their mind of what they were trying to remember. I would urge you to go out and look at, just Google or look at Wikipedia for the method of loci, because I think Tableau enables this to some degree with data. There are people that actually participate in contests for memory now. And this is the criteria for being a Grandmaster of memory. There's actual groups that meet and have contests, and these are things that seem impossible. Could you memorize 1,000 random digits in an hour, or 10 decks of cards, or one full deck of cards, the order of those, in under 2 minutes? These seem like really magical feats of memory, but the people that do this say they're not special. They've just learned how to use visual imagery in their mind to link this data with visuals. I mean, it turns out that people have very visual memory. We also have auditory memory, but it's not quite as powerful. I think you've probably all experienced, you know, being able to remember the words of a song that you heard 25 years ago, because it's one way we remember. But you can also remember lots of different facts if you place them in familiar visual images. For example, if you wanted to remember 10 facts and you knew the inside of your car, you could place these 10 facts visually in your mind in that car, and it's remarkably easy to remember them when you do that. And I'd urge you to try doing that. Google the method of loci and see what comes of that. And the interesting thing about these Grandmaster contests is that there's a lot of people in China, relatively speaking, that have passed this. Only 150 people in the world have earned this certification, but most of those people will say that it's just a matter of practice. So if you're interested in learning more about this, there's a couple of recent books that give you a little more information. I've read both of them, and it's fascinating how easy it is to memorize large amounts of information when you link that information visually in your mind. So try looking at these books. Now, why Tableau? Why does it enable data bricolage? How are we facilitating the adjacent possible? And how does it provide these spatial memory triggers? Well, I've talked about a lot of this, but in typical Tableau deployments, what we see is that a lot of times they start because some boss wants a report or somebody needs some information. And this is a very traditional way of using BI tools. It's also one of the least interesting ways, I think, of using Tableau, but it's a typical usage. And then the second piece of this is, once you have the report, there are always questions that come from it. And of course, you can analyze those with Tableau. So reporting and analysis are very traditional usages that people have for the product. But the third type that I don't see as many people doing is this concept of discovery. And, it's the data that you don't know and that always asking questions about that tends to be some of the highest value data and information that you can generate with Tableau. This ability to interact and blend data from disparate data sources is enabling sort of this data bricolage, where the adjacently possible information can be blended into your source data. A very common example would be taking a data set that you've got, perhaps it's sales data or purchasing information or employee data, whatever it might be. Let's just take sales, for example. Maybe you've got some information that you could get from the US Census Bureau to normalize that data, to make information that's a little bit different that you'd see just from using your own. Tableau enables this with data blending, and then ad hoc calculations enables you to create this sort of bricolage of information that wouldn't exist unless you had Tableau. So there's this three kinds of data that come from Tableau. One is the data from reports. It's sort of the context of your business or your organization. The second is the data that you need to know more about, the questions that come from looking at the reports. But the most interesting data to me, personally, with my work with Tableau, is always the data that you don't know that you need to know more about. And in fact, the first time that I actually sold a Tableau license when I became a consultant was this case. I actually was at a client, or actually a prospective client, that had told me they were considering buying a really expensive tool to do call center analysis. And I asked them, well, is this call center data, are you collecting your call data in a database? And they said, yeah, it was SQL Server. And so I said, well, we're going to come in and do a demo, but you're going to do the demo. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I'm just going to help you download the software and tell you where to drag the pills in your view so that you can see what it is you want to see. It was call data, so I knew that the probability of it being clean was pretty high. And so that's what we did. We came in, we helped the CEO, the CIO of this company download Tableau. He knew how to connect to the database. We got him connected. And then I said, well, what do you want to see about this data? Well, they wanted to see what's the busiest day of week for phone calls. So we drug a time element up on the column shelf, and we drug the number of calls or the number of records to the row shelf. And in a couple of clicks, everybody in the room's face moved about 2 inches closer to the screen. And this is data bricolage at its best. I mean, we had this data, we used Tableau to visualize the data, and that created another dozen questions that we were able to answer in a 30-minute period. And when I walked out of the room, I think everybody had forgotten that it was a sales call because they had gotten the data that they were interested in seeing, and we visualized it in a way that was clear. And so the three kinds of data here, the reporting, analysis, and discovery, were all demonstrated in 30 minutes. And so to recap what I've just been talking about, first, I talked about this concept of bricolage, being able to cut out or take things from many different sources and using data blending to be able to make sense of it. And then remember the Picasso view of the bull, you know, being able to take a complicated view of the data that was the image of the bull and abstracting it down to the essence of what was important. And then this idea that memory is visual, you know, being able to show images in a way that are memorable is important. And then finally, the three kinds of data, you know, the data you know, it's enabled through reporting, the data you need to know, which are analysis that come out of that reporting. But even more importantly to me is the idea of discovery, of finding data that you did not know was important and being able to share that. Tableau enables all these things, the bricolage, the possibilities of adjacencies, and simplified abstraction. So I think I'm just about out of time. I might be a couple minutes early. I thank you for the opportunity to present. Maybe the next time we do this, I'll figure out how to present my entire screen. But Emily, I think I'm done with my screencast. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dan. That was really great. And you're right. It is such a nice way to learn more when you start visualizing, because it is more memorable. All right. We will be back at, let's see, at 11 o'clock with the Font of All Knowledge with Emma White.